here's wishing all of you a very happy new year, and I hope that this new year brings a lot of love, light and joy to your lives, and I hope that you get everything that you hope and wish for. Hello people, this is Sonali, the Melodramatic Bookworm. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you're new to my channel, welcome to the Melodramatic Bookworm family. I'm here today to talk to you about my favorite books of 2022. I have added quite a few books in here. I have had to remove them as well. There were like about 30-35 books which I added in the best books, and it was a pain to narrow it down to 22. A couple of these are series and contain like more books, but you get the whole point which I'm talking about, right? So without any further ado, let's dive right into this video and let me share with you my favorite books of 2022. Okay, before we get on with the list, I just want to talk about an honorary mention. These are books that I've already read. They were rereads. I read them in 2021 and I ended up loving them, which were obviously the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. But since they've already been on a favorites list before, I'm not going to add them here, but they are still honorary mentions because they are amazing. I did a whole video in which I reread the books. I got paperbacks of them over here. I reread them and I watched the show. If you'd like to go check that out, link here as well as in the description box below. Okay, so we are starting off with the book that I just cannot shut up about. This is my most favorite book of 2022, and that is In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri. I mean, I don't know what to say other than what I have already said, but in this book, Jhumpa Lahiri talks about her experience with learning a new language, which was Italian for her, and everything that she encountered during this whole process and how she moved to Rome, I think it was. All those thoughts that went through her mind as she did her course in Italian, or as she learned Italian, or as she tried to immerse herself in the language by talking to the people and all of that. And then she started her journey of translating books from English to Italian, Italian to English, and we see that in Other Words, and I related so much to it. I mean, as a person who's learning a new language, who's been learning new languages for about 6-7 years now, but only this year have I taken like a proper deep interest into learning a brand new language other than the one that I'd been learning before. And this book, it sort of called out to me. I also did read Translating Myself and Others, her book that came out this year, in which she talks about translating her own works, why she prefers not doing it, and how she has translated some other books from Italian to English and English to Italian. I really loved that too, but that's more academic sounding. But In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri, I think I've said this 10,000 times before. I'll say it 10 million times again. Please go read it. Next is the two books, the first and second in the book. I bracketed off the year with these two books, The Poppy War and The Dragon Republic, and both of them left me reeling. They left me so shocked, like such a wreck. Like, I'm scared to start The Burning God now. I'll just talk about Poppy War because what happens in Poppy War obviously continues into the Dragon Republic. But the Poppy War is the story of Rin, who is Fang Brunin, who is an orphan from southern Rooster province. She's living with her foster parents who don't treat her that well. She has a foster brother and all the like, but she wants to escape that place because of a lot of reasons, and she starts studying for the test to enter the military academy Senegad, and she does get in. And what she learns over there, what she learns over there actually ends up doing for her, what it does for her in her life after the academy. And this is a whole mix of Chinese folklore, of military strategy, of wars, of politics, and there's so much going on during the whole book. I mean, every few pages you get a twist. These two books are so adrenaline filled, and that is exactly the reason why you just can't stop reading it. Next is The Mountains Sing by Yuen Fan Ke Mai, and this is such a gut-wrenching book, but it's also a book of hope and strength. The characters from this book have stayed with me. This is a story of people before, during, and after the Vietnam War. This story starts off with the grandmother leading her granddaughter to school. She's taking her to school. They are living in North Vietnam, and suddenly an announcement sounds that American bombers are coming. So now they have to rush to find a bomb shelter. But when they come out, there's carnage everywhere. And now they have to get home. The grandmother tells the granddaughter about how life was for her as a child. She's telling her history, because passing down of history is important, and she's talking about her childhood and how they were rich at one point in their own village, and how things went downhill. It took a few years, but things went downhill because of politics, because of human nature in general, how family is so important, how important it is to learn about where one has come from. Even Fan Ke Mai has this amazing writing style. She handles it with rawness, she handles it with honesty, but she also does it with kindness and compassion. And you know that since fiction is a reflection of reality, or vice versa, things are going to happen this way. I love this book so much more, especially because it taught me a lot about the Vietnam War, directly as well as indirectly, because I was reading so much of it that was set during the Vietnam War, before and after. I went and did my own little inadequate research about what it was all about, and learned about the basics of what happened during back then, and I love this book for it. Even now, the characters, I can just see them before my eyes. They have stayed with me even like weeks after having finished the book. Next is another book that I have probably already spoken about last year. It's already last year. 2022 is last year. Okay, fine, cool. Not panicking at all. But the book I'm talking about is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. And in this book, Virginia Woolf talks about how women are not given their due, and about how in a lot of places in life, and not just in the literary circles. I mean, she talks about literary and art circles, and how men are accorded so much more importance just based on their gender, but women, irrespective of how much they do, or irrespective of how much talent they have, they are just not. And through this, she takes us on this whole journey. She talks about how women have been disregarded, and how women have been looked down upon, and why it would be better for humanity as a whole if women and men were looked at equally. I just find Virginia Woolf's words to be so powerful. She has this knack of writing with sarcasm, and that sarcasm she uses as a weapon. And she makes dry remarks, she makes witty remarks, but there is a seriousness to them, because we know why. And I loved it. After having read A Room of One's Own, I'm a full-blown Virginia Woolf fan. Next is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff. This is an epistolary memoir in which Helen Hanff and a bookshop in London called St. Mark's and Company exchanged letters for about 20 years. And it's one of the most heartwarming but also heartbreaking books that I've read. And 84 Charing Cross Road is about her experiences. I mean, in the book that I have, in the copy that I have, there are the letters that she and St. Mark's and Company exchanged. Different people at that bookshop wrote to her, but most of all it was Frank Dowell who she exchanged letters with, and how their camaraderie grew, how their friendship grew, even though they had never met each other. She kept trying to go to London, they kept inviting her, but she never could during Frank's lifetime. It just made me feel so warm. I mean, I did cry at especially one place, but all the others, it's just so funny, witty, warm, and you just want to give all of those characters a big hug because of everything. Next up is Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, by Cho Nam-ju and translated into English by Jamie Chang. And this is the story of Kim Jiyoung. At present, she is just over 30 years old. She's just had a baby, and then suddenly one day she starts behaving like the women in her life. And then from there we go into a flashback of from her childhood, and we see everything in the flashback in the way that the world treats women. They think microaggressions are just us overreacting, and how the treatment of men is accorded much more importance than the good treatment of women. The world is hell-bent on telling us that we are just paranoid. And in this book, the author, along with a lot of statistics, it feels like, this is also a very short book, but it's a fabulous book. It just made me so angry. My blood boiled at every time someone was a complete ass to Jiyoung. I've seen this happen in real life. It's such a reflection of reality. It just shows you shows the society the mirror. Read Kim Jiyoung by 1982 to see the kind of treatment that women get. And it's not just microaggressions, it's the big ones as well. Next is Tin Man by Sarah Winman, and this is a quiet but powerful book that will just stay with you. Ellis and Michael meet when they are very young, about 12 years old, and they become fast friends, they become best friends. And when they grow up, Annie and Ellis meet and they marry, but Annie, Ellis and Michael are a strong trio. They have formed a connection with each other, but something happens that now leads to Michael being out of the picture. He is not in touch with either of them, and he's just distancing himself from them. But what exactly has happened, that's what you learn in this book. And in Sarah Winman's storytelling is just so powerful. It just leaves a mark on you, especially maybe because of how quietly it does it. And it's not then that you realize that power doesn't mean noise. Power doesn't mean sound. It doesn't have to make burst firecrackers everywhere, or it doesn't have to shout from the rooftops that it is powerful to actually be powerful. This book, in its quietness, in its silence, it leaves more with you. It leaves more lessons with you than any other book could, and I love that about it. It just makes you feel things. So don't get impatient with it. Just keep at it, keep going, and you will see that Sarah Winman's writing is just way past brilliance. It's amazing. Next up is a book that I was really excited to read. It was one of my most anticipated book releases of 2022, and that is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. And it's no wonder that it's found its way onto this list, right? We follow Noor and Salahuddin, Salahuddin's mother has just died. Noor has just turned 18. Noor and Salahuddin are not talking to each other because of something that has happened. But Salahuddin's mother's death brings Noor back into his orbit, and now they are slowly, carefully reconciling. But now since his mother has passed away, she was the one who's taking care of their motel, and now Salahuddin has to take care of the whole thing. He realizes that the motel is on the verge of bankruptcy, and they're going to take it away and all of that, and now he has to do everything, things that he never even dreamed that he would, to do it. And Noor is battling battles of her own on the home front, on education side, how they try to learn from their parents' lives, how they try to learn from their parents' mistakes, try not to learn from their own mistakes and try not to make more, but things happen, and how they all come to terms with everything that's happening from this entire story. This is a story of racism, discrimination, of not being loved enough, of not being understood, of not being able to channel that rage anywhere, and of it all coming to a head at some point, and what these two teenagers are going to do when that comes to happen forms this entire story. And I loved this story. I loved Noor and Salahuddin's story, and it just comes to a point where your own rage, your own anger, your own fury at the world starts simmering up inside of you, and you just can't find a place to put it because of everything that's happening in the book. I'm so glad Sabaa Tahir won the National Book Award for this one, because these are stories that needed to be told. This is a story that needs to be told because these things are happening everywhere, which is the worst part, I think, of worst side of humanity, it feels like to me. And I loved it. It's a YA book. I think this is her YA debut, if I'm not mistaken. Please go ahead and read it. It's an important book. Next is a collection of 3 short stories called The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This is a story of a woman, at least the yellow wallpaper, who has gotten who is unwell, and she is locked in a room by her husband. She is told not to go anywhere, and as she is in the room, she looks at the wall opposite and there's a yellow wallpaper, and she thinks she starts seeing things, and she tells her husband that she is not feeling well, not just physically but mentally as well, and he just says it's just a false and foolish fancy, and I just went nuts at that. But this is a reflection of how society treats women's mental health, of how society treats women and women's health as a whole, and how we are not taken seriously at all. This is highly impactful, brilliant storytelling. There are 2 other stories in this book as well, and both of them are on the same vein but not as impactful as the Yellow Wallpaper is. Next is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is the story of Sadie, which is told in part documentary and part Sadie's story itself, and both of them come together to form a story so powerful. Sadie's sister has gone missing some time ago, and now Sadie is also missing, but according to what we gather, she is now hunting for the person who did this to her sister. How everything ties up and how the documentary crew follow Sadie's footsteps and how they start piecing things together is absolutely fantastic. It just gave me goosebumps because of how well executed it was. I listened to the audiobook as well, and I would recommend that you do listen to the audiobook. If you intend to read the paperback, then I recommend pop the audiobook in and follow along, because the documentary is supremely well made. It's amazingly well made, but I must tell you that it can get a little violent and gory, and it might make some people uncomfortable. So if you are not comfortable with that, then proceed with caution. Next up is Honor by Thriti Umrigar. This is a gut-wrenching story of a Hindu woman who marries a Muslim man, and how her brothers are now after her blood because she tarnished the family name by marrying a Muslim man. And this all comes to light when Smita, an America-based journalist, is called to Mumbai to replace her friend who is unwell or something, and she has to cover the story of the burn victim, who is Meena, who is the Hindu woman who married the Muslim man. This is a gut-wrenching book about honor killings, about religious fundamentalism and extremism, and this made me sad, and this made me really wonder if humanity has any humanity left in it, because I know that everything that happens to Meena isn't fictionalized. It happens in real life. This is the story of how men think that women have to always be under their thumb, that they have to do things that they deem is right, and anything that they do other than that, it's just deemed as dishonoring their family, dishonoring their name. It just made me so angry, and I started off the year with this book, and it just broke something inside me, this book. Please keep in mind the trigger warnings: rape, sexual abuse, sexism, murder and death, and this whole lot. Next is a book that I did not think that I would love this much, but I really do, and it's made its way onto this list. The book is called Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I've spoken in detail about this in a video that I did in mid 2022. It is called the Popular Book Talk Romances thing, in which I try to read popular book talk romances and see if they were worth the hype for me. But this was definitely worth the hype. This is a story of Nora Stephens, who is a literary agent, and she feels like she is the unlucky one. She is the one in the relationship, or from the movies, the Hallmark movies, in which the man goes off to a small town, and then he falls in love with a small town girl and he leaves her. Nora is that city girl. She is a proper city girl, by the way, who loves living in the city, and she meets Charlie Lastra for some sort of negotiations, and that's that. But sometime later, Libby, her sister Libby, whisks her off to a small town or village, if you could call it. Who does she bump into other than Charlie Lastra himself? And now all of this comes together in this whole mixed bag of things. What exactly happens? And you can see from the cover what is going to happen. And this book tells you that it's fine. Wherever you want to live, I know you love that place, go live wherever you want to live. And nobody judges anybody for anything in this book. And another thing that I loved about this book is that it does not just focus on the romance. It focuses also on familial relationships, on Nora's relationship with her sister, and there's a bit of a backstory going over there, and how their relationship has developed and how it is still how it will be moving forward. Emily Henry's works have not worked for me before, but this one was. Next is Warlord of Ayodhya Rebellion by Shatrajit Nath, and this is the story of Bharat when and how he handles the throne and how he handles the kingdom, all the politics that's going on as Rama, Sita and Lakshmana are serving their exile. This is such a brilliant book. Shatrajit Nath has a way of writing that will keep you hooked. It's a fast-paced read. I just flew through the book, it feels like. And despite having all of this action, the politics, the intrigue, the espionage, the spying and all of that, there's this sort of compassion, this kindness with which he treats Bharat, and that is not something that I can say about a mythological character that I've read in a long time. To see this sort of quietness, this sort of depth, this sort of strength of character in Bharat was something else for me. I want the next book as soon as possible. If you've read the Ramayana, you know what happened, but Shatrajit Nath gets down to the nitty-gritties. He tells you about Bharat's everyday life, about his relationship with his son, with his wife, with his wife's father, with the people around him, and the political decisions that he has to make, and the people that he has to please in order to, stay on the throne, or in order to keep at his power. And it's just brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I did a full review of this book both on my blog as well as on my Instagram page. If you'd like to go check that out, links are in the description box below. Next is Roar by Cecilia Ahern. This is a collection of 30 short stories in which every short story has a woman as the main character, and we see her life and the decisions that she has to take, and it's such a powerful feminist twist to every one of these stories. And this is one of my favorite books of all time, and I'm planning to make a feminist book recommendations video, and this will probably be on that list. It's that powerful. I really enjoyed it. I loved reading about all those 30 women. It's just the premises themselves are so unique. They are so unpredictable, and the endings are even more so. And you see that the author, in metaphors and allegories, she is trying to say something. And when you understand that thing, it's just like fireworks are going all over your head. Next is another short story that I read in December, but this short story by Nikolai Gogol called The Overcoat, I picked up because of the namesake. And this is a book in which you see how the world works. You see how one overcoat can be the difference between people treating you humanly and people treating you like you are nothing. And there are so many layers to the story. This is a story of a simple employee, of a government employee, I think he is, and he's just doing his work. He's content to do the copying and everything, but his overcoat is fraying thin. Now he goes to the tailor and he asks him to make him a new overcoat. When the tailor finally agrees to make him one. He gets all the material, etc, 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 gives him to the tailor. That whole anticipatory weeks of waiting for that overcoat, it's just the happiest you see him across the story. And then things happen around that overcoat, how people treat him at office when he has overcoat and when he does not have it, is just so starkly different. It reminds you of what the world is like. I'm just so amazed in the way that Gogol has put in so many themes into this one short story, and I can see why he's considered like a cornerstone of literature as a whole, not just Russian literature but of literature as a whole. And very easily it became one of my favorite reads of 2022. Next is Our Nana Was a Nutcase by Ranjit Lal. This is the story of 4 children and their grandfather. Their parents are like diplomats, high-ranking diplomats who have to keep traveling, so they've left the children with their maternal grandfather Nana, and he, being a retired army person, he brings up the children in his own style. Like he wakes them up at a particular time with a bugle, I think, and then he gives each of them a rank, a name, and he calls them, he assigns tasks to them and all the like. But what happens when he starts losing memory? Like he starts forgetting things, and he is adamant that he is okay, that nothing bad is happening to him. The relationship of the 4 grandchildren with their grandfather is so precious, it's so pure. I never got to know either of my grandfathers. Probably because of that, I became even more emotional at this book, because that's a bond that I never had. And to see the children doing so much for their grandfather and the grandfather doing everything in his hands for his grandchildren, that bond was so pure, so beautiful. This is a book that it's just going to make me emotional every time I talk about it because of how beautiful it is. Next is Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. This is told in screenplay format, and this follows Willis Wu, who is an extra in Hollywood and who is stuck playing generic Asian man and some background characters, etc, etc. He aspires to be Kung Fu Guy. Kung Fu Guy in this book is represented as somewhat of being the zenith of what Asian American men can aspire to as extras in Hollywood. And this is a whole sort of, I can't call it a satire because it actually happens, but it's a narration of how Asian Americans are not represented properly. And this whole book, it just gives you in the form of sarcasm how things are, and it shows us how Asian Americans are treated and how things could be different but they are not. Like there is a hierarchy in Hollywood, or in the world you could call it. There is a hierarchy. Asian Americans are more often than not, they are most like dumped into one stereotype after another. How Willis Wu follows through all of this and how his career moves forward, or does it move forward, or what exactly happens to Willis, that's what this whole book is about. And it's just brilliant. Like, I've used this word so many times in this video that I've lost track. It sheds light on the little things, the microaggressions that you think that are not microaggressions, that you think that we are overreacting. Like, again, I'm echoing something that I've said earlier in this video, but that's exactly what happens. Next is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is such a brilliant science fiction in which Jason, I think his name is, he wakes up one day to realize that the world that he has woken up in is not his own. He goes to what he thinks of his home, but he realizes that there's nothing there. His wife is apparently not his wife, and his son isn't even there. And now he has to find out what exactly is happening, because in this world that he's woken up in, he's being congratulated as something of a genius. Like, is this some sort of a dream, or is this really reality? Or then if this is reality, then what exactly has happened to his life? Why has everything disintegrated, and what is going on. He is a college professor, for God's sake. Why is he be touted as being some sort of a scientist genius or physicist genius or whatever it is? And this was such a thrilling read, because throughout the whole book I was like, what is going to happen? And things that I thought would happen did not end up happening. I was hoping for certain things. I was hoping that certain things wouldn't happen, and everything just got mixed up so well. I never say mix up in a good context, but this one was brilliant. And I feel like this is such, I don't want to give away things because this is such a huge part of the plot. This is the plot, not just a huge part of the plot. If you are looking for science fiction, thriller science fiction, then this is one that you should definitely pick up if you haven't picked it up already. Next is another thriller, which I feel like I hit the jackpot with this one, but this is called The Broken Ones by Sarah A. Denzel, and this follows Sophie, who is now being followed. She has a feeling that there's a shadow following her, but who can it be? Is she just paranoid, or is it actually someone? Is someone stalking her? Is it someone she's met on the internet? Or is her mother faking her whole illness and is the nurse doing something? Or is it someone she knows? Is it a friend? Is it an acquaintance? Who exactly is it? Or is just Sophie is just losing her mind? What is it? She wants to know. Thing about a good thriller book is that you need to have those small clues throughout. They have to have been scattered, which you can easily overlook. And then when the author brings it back all together, that should be the point where you go like, that is such a great revelation. That was very well connected, because there were all those hints lying around which we didn't pick up on. And The Broken One ticks off all those check boxes. It has these clues in, not maybe in droves, but there are quite a few of them that will tell you without telling you that, look, this is what is going to happen. I absolutely love this book. You should also go ahead and read it. If I am saying that about every book in this video, yeah, but this was seriously good. It was great. Next is Salvation of a Saint by Kigo Higashino. This is the story of a husband and wife, and the husband is found murdered in his home, and the only other suspect could be his wife, but his wife is like thousands of miles away visiting her parents. But who could have done this? How did this whole thing happen? When the police inspector comes to investigate, he goes through the whole thing. He is now enamored with his wife, with the victim's wife, but his assistant feels like there's something wrong in that house. Something is not right, and she needs to find out what's going on. So she has to take things into her own hands, and she approaches Detective Galileo, who also joins the team to investigate. Now, what exactly will come out of it forms a story, and this is such a masterpiece. There's so much nuance, there's so much detail to everything that the killer does in this, and the way Galileo unravels things and everything comes to the fore, it's amazing. I'm an instant fan of Kigo Higashino. I probably said that with Malice as well, but this just refreshed it all over again. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Next is actually 3 books. I warned you before, but next is the All for the Game trilogy by Nora Sakavic, and this has obviously 3 books, which is The Foxhole Court, The Raven King, and The King's Men. But this is a story of Neil Jostin, who is a player of XC, but he has a dark past and he is on the run. But when he comes to Foxhole Court and he joins the team there, this whole team is like a fractured mess. The people are fractured, the team as a whole is fractured, but here Neil intends to not stay for a long time, but he starts forming bonds with the people here. It's a strange way of forming bonds, but to see him bonding with everyone, to see people opening up to him, and how everything progresses, and how his progress in XC takes place, how he learns things both about XC as well as about life, about friendship, and this whole thing forms this entire story. And I love this book, especially because of the character development in here. The character development is simply top notch, right from the time that Neil appears to the very end in the third book. There's a brilliant character development. Otherwise, every single one of these characters, they show such depth, such strength. On the whole, the way they grow from one strength to other strength, and how they stand up for each other, and how this whole found family works, I absolutely loved it. Last but not the least is Sick Kids in Love by Hannah Moskowitz. This is about two sick kids in love who fall in love. See, the reason why I love this book so much, or why it is on this list, is because of the relatability factor. Isabel is a teenager with rheumatoid arthritis, and I related to her and some other things which I will talk about, because I have rheumatoid arthritis, and to see her struggling and to see myself in those struggles, it sort of brought back things to me. And throughout this, she meets another sick kid who has some chronic illness which has a very complicated name, and it is painful. It is equally painful. And now both of them connect and they fall in love. So in this book, the author talks about how it is to live with chronic illness, and how sometimes things do not happen where we can participate in it, even though we want to. And even though I have not lived those particular experiences, I've been very lucky in the people that I have around me throughout this all. But to actually read that, I know that humanity is capable of doing those things, is capable of ignoring a person and their chronic illness, and we just can't do some of the things that feel very normal to other people. For example, walking. If I walk for 10 minutes, my heels start aching, my knees start aching, and that's not something I can control. Chronic illness is something that we have to live with. We don't need pity. We just need love. We just need love, friendship, support. That's all. Just understand us. That's enough for us. And that's why this book is on here. One, because of relatability. Two, because it's well written. It does not sugarcoat things. It does not drag out things. It does not just pile things one on top of the other. It just puts things as they are. So those were my favorite books of 2022. Which of these have you read? Which ones do you want to read? What were your favorite books of 2022? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please like it and share it to spread the word. And if you like my content and would like to see more from me, don't forget to hit subscribe and click on the bell icon beside the subscribe button to get notified as and when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and add melodrama to your life.